Hello everybody, my name is Changeling Girl. I have been a DM for 14 years. I'm just now entering into professional DMing. I also am a content writer. And for this specific video, I'm going to be talking about making characters for an upcoming Pathfinder game that I call Land of the Dragons. It's a campaign. It's set in a specific world setting of my own design called Dragonye. And the reason that Dragonye is different than other settings you might find in D&D or Pathfinder or other fantasy RPGs is that it is a high fantasy of epic proportions, meaning there's a lot more leniency in some of the rules. Anybody can achieve anything if they can roll high enough. But the biggest factor is when you roll your stats are definitely going to be higher than most of the characters that you've probably made. But everything else is still pretty standard to whatever system you're using it for. For this particular video, I am going to be running through making a Pathfinder character for my Dragonye setting. There's an upcoming game that I have, or maybe some games in the future, and this video just kind of goes through step by step so you can make your characters at home, but also make sure that they're going to fit the game that I'm going to be running for you. So, to start things off, if you don't have any of the books, the cool thing about Pathfinder or Paizo is that you can find all of their resources online. I can actually pull that up on my computer and show everyone what the website's called and what it should look like and how to navigate it just a little bit. For myself, when I go through each of the steps, I'm going to be using the core rulebook, so if you have the Pathfinder core rulebook, you can follow along with me as well. So I'm going to pull up the internet as I have here. I'm using Microsoft Edge for now. I accidentally blocked my Chrome earlier and I didn't realize it. But to find what we are looking for, I'm just going to type in Paizo. And it will bring up the site. Now, we just want to find the rule books. So, Pathfinder, rule books, online rules. And this takes you to their list of stuff. Now, they have a second edition and Starfinder, but for the Land of Dragons campaign, we are running it in the first edition. So, once you select that, everything that you would need to click on will be here. You have your classes, your feats, the races. Let me go ahead and select races. Now it's going to have you pick one. I want to see what some of these other races are because you can pick from anything that's listed here. And then it just gives you a whole list of different kinds of playable races you can play in this game. So I'm just going to go ahead and click one of them. This tells you where you can find it in the books. And then it gives you all the information you need to know about them, like their background, their racial traits, all of the stats that we're going to be putting into your character. They also have what are called sub-races, so you can be a little bit different than the other ones. So they have, for example here, the ability modifiers would be a little bit different. The racial trait would be different, so you'd replace all the base stuff with that. But we're going to get to that point eventually. But everything you need to know will be here. My typical way of doing things is just to type in Pathfinder classes. And then you can also use this site for anything that you would need. Okay, and an ad. See, the other one is much nicer, but if you are trying to look up something very specific, you don't want to go exploring like a specific feat or a specific skill, spell, then you can just type in Pathfinder and whatever you need to look for, and the D20 PFSRD will usually have what you are looking for. So, I have my core rulebook right here. I'm going to look at the steps and we're going to go down the line and we're going to make a character together. And what it says here is that step 1 is to determine your ability scores, but I always say that step 1 is actually to make your character concept, because you can't put your stats in until you have an idea of kind of how you want to play your character. And your concept can be something as simple as your race and class that you want to play, or just even your class. But if you could have just a little spin of a backstory, for example, I want to play someone whose profession is to be a street performer who's going to be a jester. And I want him to have an animal companion that does the cut, purse stuff for him. So now that I have that concept, I have an idea of what I want to make. It sounds like he's going to be somewhat of like a bard or rogue. So if I have multiple levels, I can multi-class. So I can pick one or the other, bard or rogue. And then I'd have to find a way to get an animal companion. I'd have to either buy one with my money, or I could take a specific feat, or I might even take ranger and start putting things towards more stealthy stuff. Making a concept like that is going to be a little bit harder, but there's always a way to do it with archetypes. Archetypes are listed classes that pretty much mix one or two together that are not listed in the main one. For ours, we're going to do the main one, but to make a character like that, it is 100% possible with Pathfinder, and that's why I love it so much. But for now, we're going to think of just some basic concept that we can pick a class to that gives us an idea of where we want our ability scores to be. Once you have your concept, then we can go to the stats. And this is where we get into our first difference in a regular game compared to one of the Dragonye games that I run for my setting. So, I have my dice right here. The difference is, instead of rolling 3d6 or whatever combination of d6s you have, so as you can see, instead of rolling your normal 3d6 or whatever combination of d6, I actually have people roll 2d8s and a d6 for each stat. Now that does guarantee a higher stat, as we have a 11 here, or pretty generic neutral stats. 7 plus 5 is 12. It gives you a good balance in the middle. 10, 12. But when you roll really high, say that I rolled higher than a 2. Let's say that I rolled a 6. I have 12 plus 8, which makes a 20. It's not very likely you're going to get a roll like that. 10, 14. But they usually stick somewhere around the middle. Sometimes, for some people, they end up rolling really low still, regardless of having these higher rolls. If that happens, the way that I usually kind of judge if it's fair or not is you need at least 3 stats that are above a 13 for it to be fair for the other players that they're going to be playing against. For example, I had a character, very middle ground. One of my players rolled really high. He had a 20, an 18, and a 17, and then another 17. While my highest was probably like a 16. So I re-rolled a couple of stats to make sure I had at least 3 above 13, and that was enough to balance it out. So if you happen to roll stats where you don't have 3 of them above a 13, just let me know or let your DM know, and they might not, but they should allow you to at least re-roll 1 or 2 of those to try to balance you out. But it's always up to the GM at the time. Don't take that upon yourself to roll. Write down the rolls that you have before asking for a re-roll. So with your 2d8 and your 1d6, you're going to roll 6 times. You're going to write them on the side. Don't plug them into any stats yet. You're just going to write them on a note paper because we don't even have our character sheet yet. So just roll them, write them, and save them. And once you have at least 3 stats that are above a 13, your ability score rolls are going to be completed. Now we need to actually get a character sheet. Not everyone has a printer at home, and I understand that. So I'm going to give you 3 different ways to have a character sheet. I'm going to have the link in my YouTube video for the one that you can download and print if you are able to print, but I can also show you a character sheet you might be able to find online, and also a character sheet you can download onto your phone. I personally use the phone app for all of my characters. I think it's rather easy to use, rather easy to download. You don't have to pay anything for it. You have multiple characters there, and it does some of the math for you. So I'm going to go over both of those. First, I'm going to go over the app. So for the app version, you're just going to go over to your whatever app store that you have for your phone. Go to the little search bar, and we're going to type in Pathfinder CS. And it should pop up one that looks like this. If it's not this one, I'll have a list of them. I know it's in reverse. You'll have to hang tight. But see, it's like a little golden D20. And you should be able to install it right there. It should look like something like this, with this little picture of a guy, the different characters you can put in there. Yeah. Once you have that downloaded, you can use it. I'm going to go ahead and open mine. I already have some characters listed here. To start one, you're just going to hit the little plus, type in their name. I'll type in Hen. It'll pop it up, and you can click on it,
and you can literally hit all of these little pencils to update it as you want to. So I recommend just playing with that for a little bit, figuring out how it all works before you start putting things in here. So from here, we are going to look up a Pathfinder character sheet. Type it up. Have this first option here, which I've already selected before. Log in. I already made one earlier, so every time that you make one, it'll say like new character. You can start editing the page that comes up. Let me go ahead and open up my active character I started. And this is what the character sheet will look like. You just type in the information, all of your abilities, and these are the numbers that we recently rolled up that we're about to plug in, and everything else that you could need. Basic attack bonus, which we'll go over. This is where you add your attacks, all your skills. And every time you do that, you can easily just hit right click, save as, if you want it saved onto, we'll say, our desktop to make it easier. So it's right there when we play. I already have one here. Type it in, hit save. I'm going to hit cancel because I already have this one up. And then on your desktop, it should have a file and a Chrome option or whatever internet provider you have, and you'll select the internet version straight up here. But if you just click on that first link when you look at the character sheet, all of your characters should be saved because they are saved to your Google account. Once you have your character sheet and now you have your stats rolled, we have to plug in those stats into your ability scores. So you have those 6 different options: strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. Depending on your character concept and what class you're thinking about, try to place those the best you can. Once you have those placed, you need to put down the modifier that goes with it. So everything that's a 10 or an 11 is going to be at a +0. A 12 and a 13 is a +1. 14 and 15 is a 2, and so on and so forth like that. Once all your ability modifiers are done, we are finally ready to get into the choosing of the specific stuff. This is where it's pretty standard to every other Pathfinder system or D&D system. We're just going to go down the line and do the order of making our characters. So let's go ahead and move on to step 2. Step 2 is officially picking your race. You can use any of those online resources that I showed you. We'll go to 1st edition Pathfinder and select races, and they're going to have either the core, which is the basic, what's in the standard core rulebook, or all of the other races that are in all the other books. Once you have your race picked, it's going to give you a list of stats that you need to actually put in. So let me go back to one of the races that we were looking at. I'll go ahead and do one of my favorite races, the Catfolk. So from here, we are going to go to races. Other races. Let me see if I can find them. Catfolk. Everything that you need to know about the race that you pick is going to be right here. It tells you some information about them, a little bit about their background, their description, their societies, all of that fun stuff, even some suggested names. This is where we get to the actual stats and the nitty-gritty of it. But first and foremost, you have your ability scores that are on there. With your ability scores, they're just going to tell you which ones are going to go up and which ones are going to go down. You're going to apply these numbers to the numbers that you've already written down, which should change your modifier accordingly. Which it should only change it by like 1 point because it's an increment of 2. Directly under that is going to be your type. You don't actually have to type in any of the subtype or if you're a humanoid or not, unless you want to. You can put that under any kind of notes or special abilities if you're using a regular character sheet, but you do need to write down your race on the race line.
so that way if we need to look up anything later, we can. Next is just your size. So where the size area is, you're going to put down that you're medium, which is pretty standard. Then there's a spot for your speed. It tells you, or it has two separate boxes. One is for the number speed, which would be 30 feet for this character, and then how many squares it would be. Every square is equal to 5 feet. So you just take this number divided by 5, and that tells you how many squares you can move on the map. If you don't want to fill that out, you don't have to. We'll figure it out whenever you're playing. I'm sure your DM will tell you how many squares it is if you're not exactly sure. Then you get to your actual special abilities that you're going to want to write down. For this specific race, these are the special abilities that I need to write down. But they're going to be different depending on the race that you pick. Once all of those are written down, shorthanded as best you can, or if you're using an app or an online resource, you can actually do copy and paste, which I like a lot more than writing everything out. And then finally, everyone has a set of languages that they know. There's usually a language space somewhere for your character sheet. However, for the app, I know specifically there isn't. So I put it all the way in notes at the far right if you're using the app. You have languages that you start with, but then usually every race, gets to pick more languages that are listed here under its category, depending on your intelligence score. The best way to figure out how many languages you can learn is it's your intelligence modifier. That number that's either +2, +1, +3, maybe even +4. That number is how many languages that you can add to your language list. But you can only pick from the languages that are listed in your class language spot. Race spot. But that's how you fill out your race. If you want to do any alternate traits, then you can. However, I do recommend talking to a DM about the choice that you're making. But as long as you make sure to replace the correct abilities, you can get this other ability, but that means that you can't write these down. So if they have some that overlap, let me see if I can find some. For example, these two, they both replace Natural Hunter, which means there's no possible way that you can have Cat's Claws or Clever Cat, because they take away the same racial trait. Once all that's done, then we can go ahead and get ready for step 3. So step 3 is when we actually get to pick our class. I keep saying race and class, I get them mixed up. Also, I realized that my mic was not plugged in, so the audio probably sounded really bad, I'm sorry. But picking our class, it'll be the same thing. You're going to use the online resources, or you can use the books that you have to go through the classes and pick the one that you like. For archetypes, I'm going to not include archetypes for this particular campaign because there's so many to get through and they're a lot more difficult to find. So just pick from the ones that are on that site. Once you have the one that you're going to pick, we're going to go ahead and start filling everything out that you need to know. This is how to make a level 1. For some of the games that I'm going to be running, they're going to be higher than level 1. But I'll go over quickly how easy it is to level up your character. It's just getting that level 1 done that takes the most amount of time. To go to our classes, I'm going to click right here on the side, and they automatically have all the different classes that they have available. These are also classes specifically for things that are not your characters, and then they have NPC classes right here. So let me look at one that I think would be really fun to look at. I usually ignore the psychic things. They are frustrating for sure. If you're a new player, I would definitely avoid anything that has to do with psychic stuff or the Unchained. I don't usually run Unchained characters. They're pretty much the same as the regular option. However, they have just slightly different rules and simpler abilities. So if you want to use that, you can, but I usually just go with the standard basic one. So let me go ahead to my favorite, to the Sorcerer. It pops it down right here at the bottom. Again, you can read all this information or learn more about your class if you don't know a lot about it. But we're going to go straight down here to the alignment. The alignments that you can pick are a different range. I can actually go through alignments here in a minute, but the good news about this is that you can be any alignment. We're going to first worry about our hit points. When making level 1 characters, it is assumed that you've rolled highest on the die that's given towards your class. So for this one, it's a d6. I'm going to automatically assume that I have a 6 on my die for my hit points. And all I would have to do is add in my Constitution modifier to get my total hit points that I put in my hit point box. So say that you have a Constitution of 15. That gives you a +2 modifier. So I would have 6 plus 2, I'd have a total of 8 hit points at level 1. For every level after that, if you're making a character higher than level 1, you are going to roll the d6 and add your Constitution modifier to each roll and add them in. So if you're making a level 5 character, you're going to roll an additional 4 dice plus your Constitution modifier for each dice and add that into your total of 8 in this situation. For starting wealth, this is where you're going to put the gold piece amount you have. This only works if you're level 1. If you are not level 1, then there's a specific gold piece amount that everyone of that level gets to use. It's just a matter of typing it up and looking it up or asking your DM, how much gold pieces do I have? Next, you have your skills. It's just a little section that tells you each of the skills that you are currently trained in. Where your skills are located, you have these boxes that you can check or mark or select. For each of these skills, you're going to do that. Once you have everything selected, you're going to start putting your ranks into your skills. 2 plus your intelligence modifier per level. So at level 1, it would only be 2 plus your intelligence for one time. Say you're level 3, you do that number times 3. You can only have as many ranks in your skills that is equal to your level or lower. So if you're a level 3 and you want to have a 5 stealth, like 5 ranks in stealth, you can't do that. You can only have a maximum of 3 because 3 is your current level. So if you're a level 1, the maximum you can have is only 1 rank per each of those skills. The final thing that you need to know about skills is those little check marks and boxes that you've selected do mean something. Anytime that you put at least just 1 rank, that's all it takes is at least 1 rank in that skill, you're going to get a class bonus. So where the miscellaneous modifier is, for every checked box that you have a rank in at this point, add an extra +3 into the miscellaneous bar. So when you add it all up with your ability score and your ranks, you're going to get that 3 in there. If you put a rank at a skill that's not checked, you can still use it. That means you're trained in it. You just don't get that extra +3. Your character sheet should, at the bottom of your skills, tell you that the asterisks that are on the skill list means you cannot roll them if you don't have at least a rank in them, because that means your character took no time at all to learn that skill. For example, one of them would be the knowledges. If you don't have a rank in one of those knowledges, then you cannot attempt to roll it. So make sure you put ranks in things that you want to make sure your character can do, because if you don't, you might get screwed in the end. Now we're going to move on to the fun little chart here. You're going to go based off of the level that you currently are. So most of the time, I have first level games. If it's your first time making a character, I have one coming up where we're actually going to start at 5th level. You're going to just go down the line and put in all the information where it belongs. There's a spot for your base attack bonus, your fortitude save, reflex save, and will save. Here is your special abilities that you currently have. They are going to go in the special ability section of your character sheet. So when you get there, you're going to write it down and you're going to fill it out. They are all listed directly underneath. Make sure you read them all the way through before you start writing, because you want to shorthand it as much as possible. And then, for people who have spells, if you have all of this written down, you have to write down how many spells per day you have. When you have a class that has spells per day,
They should also have an amount of spells known. Now, some work like sorcerers to where you have a specific number of spells known, and some of them work like wizards to where you have to read the whole paragraph to figure out how many spells your character can learn. So make sure you read that very clearly. If it's your first time playing a spellcaster, definitely make sure that you're getting the right information from the DM that's running your game, because it can be kind of tricky playing a magic user for the first time. If this is not your first rodeo, fantastic. You know what to do from here. If that's your spells known, your spells on one side, and your spells per day, which should be listed on the other side. When you go to your spell save DCs,
Spell save DCs should be in the middle between your spells known and spells per day, should be. That number is based off of a base number of 10 plus whatever that spell level is. So for the first one, it'd be 10 plus 0 plus the modifier that your class uses for your spells. When you read the spell section, it should tell you which one of those is. For Sorcerer, that specific ability is Charisma. So 10 plus 0 plus my Charisma modifier. Let's say my Charisma modifier is a 3 out of 17. I would have a total of a 13 DC. Every space under that, you're only just going to add one more because the spell level goes up by 1. So if you can figure out your DC for level 0, you can easily figure out your DC for all the ones all the way down. Now make sure, if you're making a character that's higher than level 1, every single one of those boxes that have special abilities in there, you get all of those special abilities. The first part, your Fortitude and Reflex and Will, should all be that base number. You don't have to add all of the levels before that. Those are just the numbers that they should currently be at. However, the special abilities, you get that level plus every level before that. So you need to make sure you write as just enough as you need to get by. There's nothing wrong with looking up information in the game, especially since we have such limited space. Unless you're using the app or even the online version, it's much easier to put down as much information as you need, because that limited space on paper is the biggest downfall to Pathfinder, because there's a lot of information for just even level 1 characters, especially if you're playing a bard. Bard have the most special abilities at starting at just level 1. Next is going to be our step 4, which is skills and feats. At this point in time, make sure all of your skills are chosen, all of your languages are chosen, you have your race filled out, you have your class filled out. You can officially say that that part is done when you get to the feats section. Feats are located on the online resource that I have already shown on the screen, that I will also be linking in the description below.
so let's check out the feats that they have listed here. Now, there are a lot of feats for Pathfinder. A lot. I recommend for anyone that doesn't want to spend a lot of time picking feats, that wants to make their character as quickly as possible, just look at the regular generic feats. These are just basic ones. They're all in alphabetical order. Make sure you also check the prerequisite, because if you don't match what's in this part, you don't get to have the cool effect of taking it. So you always have to make sure you keep an eye out for the ones that you match the prerequisites for. If we were to go to a specific one, for example, combat feats, we'll do combat feats. This is another selection of feats that includes some of the ones that were already listed that are specifically for combat use. We'll check out the familiar feats. So, different feats that you could have for just people that have familiars. We'll look at one last one, teamwork feats. Teamwork is a special one because teamwork feats only function under certain circumstances. These feats require an ally who has the same feat as you do for them to work. The reason that is because their special effect is usually much greater of an effect, so it's a matter of teamwork to get these abilities to work. But most of these magic feats are just easy pick and choose the ones that you can apply for. At first level,
you would only get one feat. You get another feat every other level, or every odd level. So at first level, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, so on, you would get to pick a new feat. But the fighters, they also have bonus feats. So if you're playing a fighter at a higher level, you're going to have a lot of feats that you need to be putting down. So if you're playing that, make sure you're tactful. You look at the different ones that branch off the ones that you have, look at those prerequisites, and try to build someone who can dominate a battlefield. And that's why fighters have bonus feats, because of those combat feats. You need a lot to get to the higher options. For example, Whirlwind Attack has almost 6 different other feats as a prerequisite before you're even able to take it. So make sure you read those prerequisites before you select them. As we're getting closer to finishing our character, there's 2 more steps left. The big one is being equipment. You should have a standard gold piece amount depending on your level that the DM has provided to you, or you can also look it up. You can type in Pathfinder character wealth by level, gold piece at 5th level, whatever you type in, it should pop up a gold piece amount. But if you want to do it the easy way, just ask your DM, how many gold pieces do I have? If you're playing the standard 1st level at the character creation, the class that you had a base starting wealth is what they had. They had one that you could roll, or they had the number that was in parentheses. You have to decide which one you go with. If you take the standard, then that's how many you get. If you roll it, there is a chance you could get less gold pieces than the standard, or a chance you can get more than the standard. But whatever you roll, you have to stick with. You can't roll and then go back to the standard because it was too low of a roll. If you make that gamble, you have to stick with it. At least that's my rules for doing it. We'll see how your DM feels about it. But once you have the gold piece amount, then you are able to finally look at your weapons and your armor, maybe some different kinds of kits, and anything else you could possibly need. But I would definitely recommend the weapon, armor, and then kits process first. You can find everything that you need on our online resource. I'm going to click equipment. We'll start with weapons. And your weapon proficiency should be given to you by the class that you picked. It'll say as you're reading the different abilities and you go under it, the first one that's listed is weapon and armor proficiencies. So make sure you only select ones that your class can actually use. So say that I stuck with my sorcerer. They use simple weapons. This has all the weapons that you could use, what their damage is going to be for a medium-sized creature or a small-sized creature if you're playing a small-sized creature. You also have your critical range, your weight, which you can put down when you put it under your inventory spot if you're keeping track of weight, and the type of damage it is. You have bashing, piercing, or slashing. Make sure that you do put down if there's a special ability on there. You need to have that written down on your character sheet. It's nice to have your weapon box have just the information you need, but then to also put your weapon in your inventory or gear slot so you can write down anything you need to know about it. Once you have at least one weapon picked, then you can go to your armor. If you want to buy a second weapon, you absolutely can. Just make sure you don't overspend the amount of money that you possibly have. Armor. You also have an armor proficiency that should be listed. I know sorcerers, I don't think they can use any armor, but we'll go ahead and look at the light armors in case I took light armor proficiency. For whatever reason, I wanted to have armor. These are the different armors you have. I have gold piece amount here. If you are wanting to make anything masterwork, there is a very simple way to figure out what it would cost to make anything you have masterwork. If you want a masterwork weapon, it's going to cost you 300 extra gold pieces on top of the normal price for the weapon. And the benefit that you would get is that your attack bonus would go up by another 1
for the actual stat for your weapon, but that's it. If you want to make your armor masterwork, it's only going to cost you 150 gold pieces, and it brings your check penalty down by 1. It doesn't increase the bonus, it just brings the check penalty down. So, for example, with something I think is a chain shirt, it's at a -2. If you make it masterwork, it would cost 250 gold pieces, and it would be at a -1 check penalty. That's the total price, it would be 250. It'd be 150 plus the original 100. So if you have the money to do that, masterwork is definitely helpful. You also need masterwork in order to make magic items, which I'm not going to go over making magic items in this video. If it's something you really wanted to do as a DM, I can work with you, or your DM can work with you, but I will have a future video of how the magic items in Pathfinder actually work. When you're writing your weapons down, the total attack bonus that you're going to use is going to be equal to that base attack bonus that you've written down on your character sheet already, plus your strength modifier, unless it's a ranged weapon or you have the feat weapon finesse. When you read the feat weapon finesse, it'll tell you specifically when you can use your dex modifier instead of strength, but for the standard, it's base attack bonus plus your strength modifier, plus that extra +1 not if you made it masterwork. Everything else is going to be the same as it's written in the chart, except for the damage. It's going to be that die, the D8 or D6 or D12 or whatever it is, plus your strength modifier. So make sure you add a little plus in the little corner of it, what your strength modifier is, because you do get to add your strength modifier to the damage. Once you fill it out for all your weapons, and you fill out all the information you need for your armor, we're going to go to the very final step, which is finishing touches. That's where you go through every single box, things that say you need your dex score here, your strength score here, your intelligence score here. Go through your character sheet and fill out all of those boxes and start adding up your math. If you're using the app, once you just kind of put it in, it should automatically do the math for you. But I do want to warn you, there's only one flaw in this app that I showed you, where your perception skill is. If you click on it and you put like a rank or anything in it, it changes the ability modifier to a strength score instead of wisdom, but you can easily change that by holding it down, so it would edit it and select wisdom instead of strength, and it will fix that right up. And that's how you do your finishing touches, your race, your class. You can even add in your physical look, like your hair and your eyes at the top of the character sheet. We also need to do your alignment. There are different kinds of alignments. To go down the line, you have your lawful good, lawful neutral, and lawful evil. Chaotic good, chaotic neutral, chaotic evil, and then neutral good, neutral neutral, or neutral evil. If you want any more information about those specific alignments, I recommend searching them online or asking your DM. There's a lot of information involved, but they're pretty similar to how they would sound. You just pretty much decide if you want to be good, neutral, or an evil character, but make sure your DM is okay with playing an evil character, because if you play someone that's evil and no one else is evil, you might not be able to enjoy the game as much as everyone else, because everyone else might try to fight you, or vice versa. So you have to make sure your DM is on the same page. But with that should be your finishing touches. Everything should be completed. If there's any questions that you have that I didn't go over, you can leave a comment. You can also, as I said every single time, do not hesitate to ask your DM if you're just not sure. But this should be enough information to get you started and for you to have a character ready for one of my Land of the Dragon campaign adventures. Until next time.